Imagine looking at Earth from far above and seeing something impossible. The poles are bare. No whitecaps. No frozen edges. Only warm oceans reaching into regions that were once locked in cold. You expect to feel comfort when looking at a blue planet, but this version feels different. It feels heavier, as if something old and important has slipped away. You sense it before you understand it. You live on a world where ice no longer exists. The first question that rises inside you is simple. What does a planet become when one of its oldest stabilizers disappears forever? You notice the changes first at the coasts. Oceans push inland with a patience that feels relentless. Streets you once walked now sit under slow-moving water. High tides arrive deeper and stay longer. Low tides reveal nothing familiar. Shorelines that stayed steady for generations now retreat faster each year. You watch maps you trusted lose their meaning as water redraws entire borders. You feel the scale before you can measure it. A small shift in sea level becomes a global reshaping. But this is only the beginning. When you look toward the sky, the patterns you grew up with no longer hold. Storms gather faster over warmer oceans. They rise taller, spin harder, and move in unpredictable paths. The calm seasons shrink. Rain falls in heavy bursts followed by long, quiet stretches. Heat widens its reach and touches regions that once stayed protected by distance or latitude. You start to understand that without ice, temperature is free to fill every place it can reach. Rivers shrink as mountain ice disappears. The flow weakens from the top down. Valleys feel the loss first. Cities feel it next. Reservoirs drop quietly until a thin line of water runs through a basin that once held depth and power. You sense the tension this brings. Water that once arrived with predictable rhythm now depends entirely on rainfall. You realize how much life relied on the slow release of frozen storage. Without it, every dry season feels sharper. Forests begin to climb into higher ground. Species that once lived in cool regions search for new homes as their old environments warm beyond comfort. Birds that once marked seasonal change now wander through altered routes. Insects travel farther. Diseases follow them. You see the chain reaction forming. When temperature shifts, everything that depends on it must shift too. Some adapt, some retreat, some vanish quietly. Cities face their own test. Heat builds inside concrete and glass. Nights lose their cool relief. Air shifts from warm to heavy. People organize life around shorter outdoor hours, deeper shade, and constant cooling. Technology steps in where nature once helped. Buildings use reflective surfaces. Transit networks run at cooler times. Work patterns move toward early mornings and late evenings. You recognize that adaptation becomes a daily task rather than a rare adjustment. As the world warms, oceans absorb more moisture. The air grows thicker. Humidity spreads across continents, making every warm day feel heavier than the last. Storm clouds build quickly over regions that once held stable patterns. Floods and droughts appear in rapid sequence. One season delivers too much water. The next delivers too little. You watch communities shift between survival strategies in a cycle that repeats without clear rhythm. What happens next changes everything. When Earth loses ice, it also loses reflection. Sunlight once bounced away from bright white caps. Now it sinks into darker oceans and land, heating them faster. This triggers a feedback loop that pushes warming forward even when nothing else changes. You notice the tone of the planet itself. Colors deepen, oceans darken, warm zones glow with new intensity. The planet feels like it is absorbing more than it can release. You think of the long past, ice-shaped coastlines, carved valleys, stored ancient air, and locked away carbon from eras long before humanity. Its disappearance does more than raise temperatures. It removes a record of Earth's history. Without ice, the planet becomes harder to read, harder to predict, and more sensitive to small shifts. What once took centuries now happens in decades. Stability fades into motion, but as the world changes, so do the systems built to understand it. Satellites track warming from above, mapping patterns that help predict storms and droughts before they form. Sensors float through oceans, recording deep currents and rising temperatures. Climate models simulate futures with high detail, showing how rainfall shifts, how coastlines move, and how species migrate. You see tools rising to match a challenge that grows each year. Technology does not replace lost ice, but it offers a way to navigate what comes next. Agriculture follows new routes. Crops move north and south into cooler land. Some regions grow new foods. Others lose what once sustained them. Farmers adjust planting cycles and build methods to shield soil from drying winds. Food systems stretch across wider distances, linking regions that once stood apart. Adaptation becomes a shared effort across countries rather than a local struggle. Energy systems shift too. More sunlight fuels more solar fields. Stronger winds support wider turbine networks. Cities rely less on fossil fuels as rising temperatures make old systems less practical. Cooling becomes one of the largest demands. Engineers design buildings that breathe better, circulate air faster, and reflect heat rather than absorb it. You begin to see architecture evolve as a direct response to climate rather than a reflection of style. Some regions find new opportunities. Ice-free oceans open routes once locked by winter. Shipping paths shorten. Travel becomes easier across the top of the world. Nations grow more interested in areas once considered unreachable. But with opportunity comes tension. Open water changes political landscapes, not just climate ones. Boundaries shift. Interests collide. You sense how closely environment and strategy stay linked. As ice disappears, memory becomes important. Images of old glaciers and polar caps feel more like artifacts than records. You look at photographs of frozen worlds with the same distance once reserved for ancient landscapes. They become reminders of a time when Earth held more balance, more contrast, and more reserve. You realize how much meaning those frozen regions carried. They were not empty spaces. They were anchors. This leads you to the deeper question that sits beneath every detail. A planet without ice is not only warmer, it is more exposed, more reactive, and more dependent on the choices made by the people who live on it. You stand in a world that has transformed faster than any generation expected. You understand that the climate is no longer a distant system. It is a direct part of your daily life. In the quiet moments, when you watch Earth turn slowly against the dark of space, you feel both the loss and the possibility. You see warm oceans, shifting forests, rising humidity, and new coastlines. You see a world that has not ended, but changed in ways that demand attention. Ice once held Earth in balance. Now that balance depends on decisions made in real time. The question that remains is simple. In a world without ice, what future do you choose to build?